Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Reminder that we got a giveaway going on all this week, so stay tuned until later in the video if you're interested in entering. That said, let's get into our first story of the day by Keiux. You don't want to switch seats? Okay. My boyfriend and I went on the same flight, but he had mistakenly booked a seat right in front of me. A nice flight attendant noticed that we were together, and she told us that the plane wouldn't be full, so she'd inform us if 2 adjacent seats would become available. It was a small plane and had 2 seats on each side of the aisle. While my boyfriend was loading our baggage in the overhead bin, a woman sat on the window seat of his row. I thought it might be a good chance to sit together. I mustered up all the courage I had in me and started to talk to her. "Hello ma'am, will it be alright if you switch seats with—" "No, I don't want to switch seats. I want my window seat," she said haughtily and proceeded to stare out the window. This discouraged me because I'm wary of confrontations. I decided to shut up. However, the flight attendant from before was behind us and made way to the woman. "Good morning, ma'am. This lady is asking—" "I don't want to switch seats. I booked a seat and I want my reserved seat." She angrily announced this without even looking away from the window. The attendant, still cheerful, said, "Of course, ma'am. You have the right to your reserved seat. May I please see your boarding pass?" The woman crisply presented her boarding pass. "Okay, ma'am, you may proceed to 19C, which is this seat," the flight attendant explained, pointing to the aisle seat. The woman was stunned, mouth moving inaudibly. She even looked frantically around for the seat number, then at her pass, but as expected, the flight attendant was right. After a few seconds, she hastily and violently, there was a lot of unnecessary sounds of hitting stuff, moved to 19C. My boyfriend sat beside her, on the window seat of course. She spent the next boarding minutes just bowing her embarrassed head down on her phone. The flight attendant gave me a devilishly knowing smile, and I whispered a thank you. When all the passengers had boarded, she moved to an aisle seat way ahead of us. There were actually 3 window seats near us, but I guess she was too ashamed to take them. My boyfriend moved to the seat beside me. If she'd just pressed pause on her arrogant attitude and tried to listen to me or the flight attendant, she would be sitting on my window seat. Notes: this does not seem to be clear. The angry lady was initially sitting on my boyfriend's assigned seat. I would not ask her to switch if it was her seat. I simply don't have the audacity. I did try to ask because it was supposed to be a win-win situation. She'd get to have the window seat she wanted but didn't have, and my companion and I could sit together. The first time she refused, we were to let it go. My boyfriend would just allow her to stay. The flight attendant did the talking for us. So if this was you, would you have the gumption to kind of press the issue a little bit more? Or are you kind of the natured person where you would kind of resign to the fate that the person is pretty grumpy, doesn't want to argue, doesn't want to talk, and you'd probably otherwise end up just sitting in your seat? Let me know in the comments below which of these you would be. Our next story is by BikerJedi. Your space? I don't think so. Many years ago, I was serving in the Royal Navy as a junior officer. My ship was alongside HMNB, Her Majesty's Naval Base, Devonport, Plymouth, England, and I was, through a bit of luck and quick thinking, in possession of a coveted mobile car pass. These were rarely issued and were highly sought after as it allowed me to park in almost any parking space on the base, and was so useful in getting all the gopher jobs that I got as a very junior sub-lieutenant. The pass is displayed in the windscreen and shows the rank and name of the vehicle's driver, as well as the number plate of the vehicle. Devonport is the largest naval base in Europe, around 2 miles as the crows fly from one end to the other. My ship was at the southernmost jetty. One morning, after returning having completed yet another errand for my boss, I tried to park my car on the jetty near the ship. Unfortunately, there was no space, but I found one outside of a workshop close by. Noting that there was no signage indicating ownership of the space and that it was a clear parking space, I pulled my car in and went back to the ship. A couple hours later, I was jobbed off with another junior officer on another errand somewhere else in the dockyard. We were both in our uniforms and we walked off the ship and headed to the car. A white van was parked across the back of my car, blocking my exit. Must be someone making a delivery, I thought. So I went into the workshop adjacent to my car and walked up to the first person I saw, a civilian contractor wearing grubby overalls. "Excuse me, do you know whose van that is outside?" "Yeah, mate, that's Dan's." "Where can I find Dan? His van is blocking my car in." "Dan, that Navy cat is here to move his car." A huge mountain of a man emerges from an office doorway, again wearing similar dirty overalls. "You parked in my freaking space, you freaking cat." It definitely wasn't his space, but I thought it was wise not to escalate the situation. I just wanted my car back. "Sorry, I didn't realize. Can you move your van so I can get my car out, please?" "Nope, I'm on my lunch break and I don't do any work for you Navy cats when I'm on my lunch break." It was around 10:30 in the morning. "So when can you move your van?" "When I go home. Now freak off." Taken aback, I had a flash of inspiration. "Look, we've clearly got off on the wrong foot here. How about I help you? You're busy having your lunch and I was clearly in the wrong for parking in your space. How about you give me your keys and I'll move your van? I'll then move my car and park your van for you." Dan gave me a long, hard look. The cogs were turning quicker than he was used to. "Okay, here's the keys. If you do any damage to the van, I'll know." "No problem. I'll move it. Move my car, then park it." He threw the keys at me, not realizing the deliberate vagueness in my choice of words. I left the workshop and went to the van. I tossed the keys to my car to my colleague. "Follow me." I pull the van forward and my oppo pulls my car out. I then lead him to the opposite end of the dockyard, around 2 miles away in straight line, 3 to 4 to drive it. I park the van amongst some other similar white vans and jump back in my car. We then drive back to the workshop. I get out and find Dan again. "Oh look, you took your freaking time. Never driven a van before?" "I've only done a couple of miles in a van. It's all a bit new to me." "Sorry, here's your keys." "Cheers, now freak off and don't park in my freaking space again." The ship sailed that afternoon, so I never found out what happened after that, but I'm guessing that Dan had, at the very least, a long walk, but probably had to search the entire base, all 650 acres of it, to find his van. I bet that was fun. To be fair, there were no markings or any signs indicating that it was a parking spot. That being said, it probably isn't the best etiquette to park in a workshop type spot where it only has 1, maybe 2 parking spots total, and assume that everything's going to be fine. Our next story is by the IncredibleTeacherMan. You want pedantry? You'll get pedantry. The background: I work at a club. Think country club for lower middle class. That holds raffles and such games as incentives for people to choose us. Because of this, as well as a liquor license, we also hold a gambling license. Chuck is an elderly member of the club and has been coming here for years. He has a little clout and is a recognized face. Starting a couple of weeks ago, Chuck began being very annoyed that with a certain raffle type game that we run, our random number generator will occasionally produce the same number twice in a row. After all, it's random. He asked us to check the rules and see if that was okay. Side note, the branch of the government that monitors gambling and gambling licenses in New Zealand is called the Department of Internal Affairs, or DIA. I personally went to the DIA website and trawled through all the rules relevant to this type of gambling, and I found nothing. I told Chuck as much and thought that would be the end of it. Of course not. To make a long story short, Chuck went to the DIA himself and found someone who agreed with him. We got an email telling us to stop, citing a rule that wasn't on the website. The rule doesn't explicitly state that we can't have the same number twice in a row. It is his interpretation of these rules that he is forcing us to comply with. Okay, fine, we won't argue. This is the guy who renews our gambling license. Chuck wins. Of course, he doesn't. See, Chuck's favorite drink is a quadruple whiskey on the rocks. In New Zealand, the largest drink you can serve is a double. Quadruples just aren't allowed. He gets around this by ordering a double whiskey on the rocks and a double whiskey shot. He then pours the shot into the other glass and happily takes his quadruple away. Technically legal, but by a certain interpretation of the law, not okay. Chuck will never have his favorite drink again, and he doesn't get to complain, because he's been very clear that loopholes are not okay. What a tick. It's really unfortunate when you have to go there, but sometimes you gotta make it personal to make somebody truly realize what they're being like. The next story is written by BikerJedi. If your pay raise isn't enough, quit. Edit. This took place in 1992 to 1993. I got a job as a security guard after leaving the army. The company refused to pay very much, so they had high turnover. Because of the turnover, they had very small raises built in at 90 days, 6 months, and a year as an incentive to stay on. My 1-year anniversary rolls around and I don't see my 50 cents an hour raise in my paycheck, but something more like 35 cents. So I called my boss. Supposedly, they wanted to give all employees a raise, so they did. Furthermore, I wasn't going to get my 1-year raise because you just got a raise. No one gets 2 raises at once. If your pay raise isn't enough, quit. I spent the next week calling in sick and showing up late while job hunting. Called my last day at the end of my shift and told them I was done and they could find someone else, giving them no notice at all. Panic mode ensued. Everyone else was at 40 hours for the week and they hated paying overtime. One of the salaried managers had to cover for me. I'm a teacher now, near retirement. My raises are still bad. I definitely think it's good that OP knows their worth. You don't have to be worth a ton of money or demand all this lavish stuff, but you know that you bring a service, you bring a level of quality that they need, that you're an essential worker there, and you more than deserve the 50-cent raise. So I don't blame OP for walking out on that. Our next story is by LifeOut2589. I don't need your help. A few years ago, I worked at a school as a preschool teacher. The majority of my students spoke languages besides English, and many had never been away from their parents before. The first few weeks of school tended to be challenging to say the least, with a lot of gestures, pictures, and, most importantly, a predictable routine and environment. The students would acclimate to the school and the learning would begin. One year I had a student that was particularly slow to warm up. I'll call her Sarah. When her mother would drop her off at school, she would scream and cry like a banshee. Thankfully, her older brother was also in my class, mixed age grouping 3 to 5-year-olds, and Sarah treated him as a security blanket. Her brother would hold her hand and they would do the routine of signing in their names and choosing a quiet activity together. That was the only way to get her to calm down and join in. A few weeks into the school year, picture day arrived. Now, picture day can be rough in a preschool classroom, especially if the kids don't understand what's happening and have never seen cameras on tripods and bright light umbrella things before. We did what we could in the classroom to prepare them, taking a field trip to the auditorium to see the space before the equipment arrived, talking about what happens during picture day, etc. But it tended to be a tear-filled day regardless. When it was our turn for pictures, we lined up and walked to the auditorium. I could tell from Sarah's face that she was already uncomfortable. We sat the kids in the chairs, reminded them to keep their fingers away from the hinges, and passed out books to pass the time. The photographer started calling kids and I would walk them up, hand them their envelope, and for a couple of students gave them some tips. Example, so-and-so doesn't speak English, so we may need you to show him what you want him to do. Apparently, the photographer was in a rush because she did not like me giving her tips. After a couple of kids, she got frustrated and told me, "I don't need your help, stay over there." That's when the malicious compliance kicked in. A couple students later, she called Sarah. I ignored her request and walked Sarah over to her and handed her the envelope. She told me to go back by the chairs. I complied, knowing exactly what was about to happen. Not 5 seconds after I walk away, Sarah started screaming and crying at the top of her lungs. The whole room turned to look at her. The other 2 photographers, the kindergartners taking photos on the stage, the kindergarten teacher, and clerk. The photographer looked nervous and sheepishly asked if I could help. I sent Sarah's brother to hold her hand and she managed to calm down. After that, the photographer let me give her tips and we finished up quickly and went back to class. You're bringing a cluster, a pretty decent sized group of kids that the photographer knows nothing about, to take still photos. I think one of the first things that the photographer would want to do in this situation is to try and hear tips or tricks or figure out the best way to handle the situation so that pictures can't be taken quickly. It's unfortunate to see that they took so long to realize that. The next story was written by CTC Cloudy. Play something without cursing. No problem. My mom asked me to take her to the doctor this morning for a checkup. I, 21-year-old male, hate driving her around because she makes car rides difficult. She hates my taste in music. It's a mix of lo-fi, hip-hop, and alt-rock that always seemed to be too loud for her sensitive ears. Today's playlist had a selection of Chance the Rapper, Toby Lou, and Smino. Great artists if you're trying to get into new music. My mom is a devout Christian woman and I am her basher of a gay son. Needless to say, I have a higher tolerance for cussing in music. I just listen to the beat and bounce around. My mom and I were bopping our heads along to Amphetamine by Smino, one of my all-time favorites, so I turned the volume up, just in time for an F-bomb. Nope, I can't listen to that. Me shuts off music. Fine. Mom, after an awkward silence, it's just that I'm praying. You know, your stepdad is going to chemo today. Can you please find something with no cussing in it? Sure, not a problem. Now, I'm a little ticked off. Here's the thing. I don't see how her praying or Pop's chemo had anything to do with my music selection, or why my music would interfere, but as a mischievous grin came across my face, I did as I was told. You want clean music? Well, do I have a show for you. I quickly tapped through my phone and found a VeggieTales playlist. Suddenly, the lyrics to the Water Buffalo song played through the speaker, inciting rapturous laughter from my mom and I as we sped along the interstate to our destination. Well, you did say no cussing. We laughed about it on the way back from the doctor's office. It's nice seeing her smile despite all the craziness going on in our lives right now. I will not allow any VeggieTales slander and or hate going on here. VeggieTales is a national treasure. So quickly now, I just want to give you info on the giveaway. So if you want to be in with a chance to win $30 in Amazon gift cards, all you have to do is leave a comment pertaining to something you saw in the video on any video we upload this week, and I will pick a winner from a random video on Sunday night after the last video has gone out and announce it on next Monday's video. So feel free to comment on every video from the week to better your chances of winning. Again, I do want to stress that the comment has to be related to the video, so you can't just leave a random comment and expect to win. And whilst you're at it, why not like the video, because it helps more than you know. That said, let's move on to our final story of the day by VelociraptorNom. I don't care if your dog peed on your notebook, you need to turn it in. This was years ago in high school, back in my chemistry class. I also had an 18-year-old senile mini poodle who would pee wherever he wanted to. We were working on these notebooks all year round and would turn them in for a massive chunk of our grades. I had done maybe half of them because I wasn't a good student back in the day. So it comes around to the end and I'm frantically trying to fill stuff in, with half of it being fake things I can't remember. It was late and I had my books on the floor near my desk. I went to sleep because I was so exhausted. Next morning, I wake up and my dog has not only peed on my notebook, he got my math book and science book too. I went to school and told my teacher what happened. She didn't believe me, and looking back, quite right of her, but she did say I was the first to use this particular excuse. She said if I didn't bring in the notebook, I would fail the class. I asked if she was sure. She said do it. So I went home and put the notebook in a gallon Ziploc bag and brought it to school. When the time came around to turn it in, I put it on her desk. She stopped mid-sentence and stared at the book. Her brain caught on to the fact that the dog had actually peed on my notebook. Then she told me to throw it away and she would be fair and give me a B grade for my notebook. I passed the class thanks to my poodle peeing on my notebook. Well, it just sounds to me like I'm going to need to go back in time, go to your school, specifically with just that teacher, and have your poodle also pee on my stuff too, because I want to get just free easy grades like that. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today, so if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which story and why in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe and turn notifications on if you haven't. All of those things help the channel grow immensely, so thank you no matter what you did. Whether you just watched the video, whether you liked, subscribed, whatever you did. Thank you all so very much for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. That said, I hope you all have a wonderful day and I'll see you all next time right here.